We have been studying Sri Aurobindo's commentary on the parable of the gods in the Kena Upanishad. And in the story so far, the eternal has appeared before the gods. They do not recognize because they cannot see or know or enter in relation with him by the powers that they represent. But they sense something. And so Agni is sent forward to know what is this mighty demon. And Agni, here we have seen, represents that power by which all forms are created. He presides over the material domain, and he knows all things in the phenomenon. He knows their law, their process, their limits, their relations. And so Sri Aurobindo says, if then it is some mighty birth, capital B, of the cosmos that stands before them, some new indeterminate developed in the cosmic struggle and process, who shall know him, determine his limits, strength, potentialities, if not Agni Jatavedas, one who has the knowledge of all things born? This situation, when you consider the appearance of something unknowable, the appearance of something which is as if a new birth, is, we have seen, always the step or the influence of the divine compelling the step forward in evolution. When first life appeared in matter, it was unknown, impossible. When first mind appeared in life, it was unknown, impossible. In the same way, today, when the supramental appears before humanity, inviting the next step in evolution, it is something unknown and impossible. Or so it seems, as we have seen already with Agni and as we will see with the other deities. Already that divine is secret within. Already it is his victory in us, in the gods, in the cosmic powers, in our psychological powers. It is his victory, and therefore the emergence and awakening of him in our consciousness is inevitable. This scene, this scenario is something so profound, so archetypal, a theme repeated in the history of the cosmos again and again throughout eternity. And it is something which calls to the human aspiration and vision. And so there are many creators who glimpse this and seem to recreate it in their own ways. And I'm tempted to share with you one such, which has had a deep impact in human consciousness, now perhaps almost 40 years ago. It is a movie which was created around a story titled 2001: A Space Odyssey. I believe it was released in 1968. And at that time it represented the most advanced computer visual graphic effects in cinema. But it was not that which made the movie special. There was something about the story itself. And the way the story unfolds, and this is done intentionally by the director, the message is intentional. The way the story unfolds, it begins with this image of monkeys fighting, and then suddenly this black rectangular stone appears amongst them. At first they're surprised, they're disturbed, they fear it. And then one of the monkeys reaches out and touches it. And the next scene shows the monkey is learning to light a fire and to develop tools and so on. And the monkey then throws, I think it is a stick or a bone, into the air, And the scene now jumps in the movie straight to the present age, where that thing thrown up becomes like a space station in Earth orbit. And the whole story after that is in modern times, where suddenly on the moon, a similar black slab has been found. Monolith, they call it, yes. A single stone. And all the attempts of science to cut it, prod it, test it, make out what it is made of, all the attempts fail. The hardest drill bit breaks. The laser simply is absorbed. Whatever you throw at it to break it is simply neutralized, ineffective. And the question is, what is this thing? The result of this process, we don't need to get into the rest of the movie, the result of this process is to challenge humanity into an awakening. Even as in the monkey age, the appearance of this monolith awakens monkey to rational mind, so too in the rational age, the appearance of the monolith awakens humanity to something beyond rationality. All the existing tools of analytics, of rationality, fail before this. In the story which follows, there is a similar monolith now in orbit around Jupiter, and there is an astronaut who goes there. Meanwhile, the computer, artificial intelligence in the spaceship is creating trouble, and he shuts it down. Very symbolic of the shutting down of the intellectual mind. The mechanical, rational machine mind has to be switched off. He then goes out into the unknown. He launches himself. And as he enters the monolith in orbit in Jupiter, the only thing he describes is it's full of stars, suggesting the image of infinity, eternity. And then the movie ends in a very strange series of images which leaves most viewers confused, but in fact is intended to trigger our own deeper intuitive perception of something. This astronaut now is shown as a fetus, an old man, and various different ages in front of the monolith. As he looks at it, the room itself undergoes changes. And then suddenly he breaks out, the room vanishes, and he is in the form of a fetus between the earth and the moon in space. The whole idea is suggestive of a new birth, a new awakening, a new beginning in consciousness, even a new step in evolution. That the movie was extraordinarily successful, people went to watch it again and again, was not so much because of the special effects. Yes, that had its impact, but it is something which puzzled people. The very presentation of the movie caused you to wonder, what is the message? What is it saying? And yet you felt a resonance which was non-rational. The ending itself is presented in such a irrational way that the mind is provoked, fails, and then something else kicks in and senses the sense of the birth into a new possibility, a new consciousness. And the only way you can represent that in cinematic terms is something which is not formed, not material, often irrational. So the movie and the director are extremely successful, not only in provoking this, the movie itself becomes like a monolith, provoking the viewer as if to break out into some higher possibility. I'm sharing this as an example because it comes very close to the image which is presented here in the text when Agni rushes forward as the power that can create all forms, that creates all forms and knows all created forms. When he is asked, "Who are you?" his response is that he can burn anything. In other words, transmute, break up and reform, transform any object that is created. And of all things created, he knows entirely. And so, the demon in front, still unseen and unseeable, has to engage with Agni by some means to challenge his power. And he throws in front a blade of grass. If such art thou, one who can burn all this upon the earth, the Eternal set before him a blade of grass. This burn. And Agni, he made towards it with all his speed, but he could not burn it. Then he ceased and turned back. I could not know of it what might be this mighty demon. And then Vayu is sent, and then Indra. Now we have to remember every tiniest detail is important. The blade of grass is small in form, is something fragile, easily burnable. And for Agni, it should cause no problem at all. The form is small, fragile, and so for Agni it should be easy. Equally for Vayu, when the blade of grass is placed for him to seize upon and blow away, take, Vayu fails. Vayu representing the life energy. And so the blade of grass is important because it is both small in form, easy to burn, as well as a living object which has life in it. And therefore for Vayu should be easy to seize and make his own, make it a means, a vehicle for his manifestation and enjoyment in form. But because the blade of grass is a representation put forward by the Eternal, behind it is the power of the Eternal supporting this blade of grass. Agni is unable to burn, Vayu is unable to seize or blow. And this representation in a blade of grass is then, because it belongs to a very ancient Upanishad, is then repeated again and again in the yogic tradition. And I suggest perhaps it has even become a kind of an archetype in other cultures, where people will say things like, when you have God's protection, even a blade of grass cannot be burnt or destroyed. Or the blade of grass becomes a symbol. Out of the blade of grass, God can manifest an intense fire. This is in Uma Sahasram by Ganapati Muni. Out of a blade of grass, the divine can manifest intense fire, and from the intense fire, release intense cold. Now the idea is opposites. The divine being in all things can emerge to manifest anything of any of his powers, not only overriding the rational processes, not only overriding the habits of nature, but breaking all limits to manifest anything he chooses freely. Such is the nature of the self, the Eternal, in relation to all forms put out. All the forms, and the suggestion is this, all the forms in the universe are his representations. To the extent that he chooses to support them for a purpose in a process, they serve the purpose and the process. To the extent that he wills in them for them to be immune to any process, or even serve a completely different purpose, well, they act as he wills. So when he chooses for the blade of grass to be immune to Agni's fire, he cannot touch it. Immune to the blowing air, life force, he cannot seize it. And this is true of everything. Because the divine in us accepts to, chooses to play out this rhythm, we flow in this rhythm, and so for all things. And when the divine potential in us pushes forward to emerge, to awaken its greater possibilities, we find in us the urge, the aspiration to grow and increase in our possibilities. In that awakening, in that emergence, we go through these 3 steps again. Agni, Vayu, Indra. First, there is this heat of a call, of an aspiration, a yearning. In its initial emergence of the push of the Agni in us, it is what the Veda describes, the smoky flame, the drive of passion, desire, which consumes itself, and the smoke it creates clouds its own perception. It doesn't know what it's seeking. It thinks it is seeking the drive of its desire. In fact, it's seeking something else, and it is lost and confused. When it pushes forward, the energy driving to seize upon the possibilities and express widely, spread out, is the action of Vayu. And into that, as the mind grows in clarity, comes the knowledge and the deeper understanding, and so on. Behind that always is the eternal, supporting and influencing, inspiring secretly. His representation in us is also in something which holds all three facets of Agni, Vayu and Indra in what we may describe as the psychic flame. In the very form of that aspiration is the sense of the flame of illumination of Agni, but not of the passionate, confused drive in our emotions or in the body's instincts. It is free from these. In that is also the power to expand, to fill, to influence, to extend its influence upon all things and direct them. But it is not the influence and drive of your life force. It is something fundamentally different. And inside that also is the perception of the senses and the mind, which is of Indra, but not in the struggling thought process, but a spontaneous, intuitive, seeing knowledge. And if we may take this analogy a step further, we may say that within us the divine presence appears to us in the form of, or represents himself to us in the form of this evolving psychic presence. In our surface nature, this is unknown to us, and everything that happens in our surface nature, in the physical body consciousness, in the vital energies, and in the mind, are secretly guided and influenced by this psychic presence. So this is just to give a backdrop, not directly related to the text, but linking it to the understanding we have from the perspective of the integral yoga. So we continue with the story now. Agni has failed, he has returned, and Sri Aurobindo uses this line, this sentence, Agni is compelled to return. He has no choice. What would he do staying on? He cannot stay on. Not having discovered, he is compelled to come back and report. One thing only is settled, that this demon is no birth, capital B, of the material cosmos. No transient thing that is subject to the flame and breath of time. It is too great for Agni. Another god rises to the call. It is Vayu Matarishvan, the great life principle. He who moves, breathes, expands infinitely in the mother element. Now this suggestion of mother element, the word Matarishvan, is extremely important because it gives you a different context. You will recall the same term, Matarishvan, appearing in our study of the Isha, Upanishad, where Sri Aurobindo explains the meaning of that term, and he translates it as, the verse was, Tasmin apo matarishva dadhati. It is, Sri Aurobindo translates as in that the master of life establishes the waters. And it's a cryptic passage. Sri Aurobindo does not elaborate too much, but the sense is that this mother element is as if the backdrop in which all the manifestation takes place. It is also the link point to the divine and the Lord. It is His power, the mother aspect, which we see briefly. Let me see if I can find the passage. Yes. Matarishwan and the waters, the principle of life. And this is the title of the paragraph where he explains this, the multiplicity and the unity and their play. And he explains the term Matarishwan thus: Brahman in matter or physical being represents itself as the universal life power, Matarishwan, which moves there as a dynamic energy, prana, and presides effectively over all arrangement and formation. And universal life establishes, involved in matter, the septuple consciousness. So it brings into the material consciousness these 7 principles. And then he says, and the action of prana, the dynamic energy, on the matrix of things evolves out of it its different forms and serves as a basis for all their evolution. And this matrix of things is this particular character of Matarishwan. It is as if the founding basis in which and out of which all the possibilities emerge. And this is held by life force. It is life force which is dynamic, which is moving and brings all possibilities into things and awakens them. In that sense, what Agni has done in matter was possible because life force brought Agni into matter and established him there also. And this Sri Aurobindo will make reference to. And so now suddenly we see, although a moment back it seemed as if Agni is the one who knows all things because he builds all things, it's actually life energy which has the power to move, to breathe, to expand in this mother element. All things in the universe are the movement of this mighty life. It is he who has brought Agni and placed him secretly in all existence. For him, the worlds have been upbuilding, that life may move in them, that it may act, that it may riot and enjoy. Now we're seeing the relationship between these two. Life is in fact the one who has brought Agni into matter, who has worked secretly, we might say, even behind Agni or through Agni, giving the dynamics, the dynamis of Agni's flame and formative power. So it is he who presides over all movement. Form can exist only because movement is possible. In fact, if you decompose any stable form, you will find behind the stability secretly is a repeating movement. What is form after all? Nothing but movement. If not movement, there could not be form. And so suddenly we begin to see Vayu as something even greater, but less material, less concrete, because not bound to form. All things in the universe are the movement of this mighty life. Now we had earlier built up this image of Agni's working and all the laws and principles and processes and all the appearances of forms and their relationships. All that was Agni's work. We are taking a step back, a meta level, not part of this process of Agni, but as if standing back to a level transcending Agni's operation. And there we see that none of this would have been possible if not for the power of movement. All the things in the universe are the movement of this mighty life. And now we are looking at reality on a deeper level. It is he who has brought Agni and placed him secretly. We do not see Agni is working, but the entry of Agni itself is possible because of a movement that brings him. For him the worlds have been upbuilded, that life may move in them. So it's almost as if all this was created by Agni so that life could come and live in things. The suggestion is this, that the universe itself of forms is made so that there can be an inhabitation, for the inhabitant to enter in and enjoy. And Vayu is the power of which not only secretly supports the form building, but then who enters the form. And this power to enter is his. When the divine chooses to enter the forms, live in them, it is by this power of Vayu. So for him the worlds have been built up, that life may move in them. So if we think about this, meditate on this idea, we will come to the conclusion that if this is the purpose of the universe for life to inhabit, then life must be everywhere. It may take time to develop forms. It may take time to organize itself and grow in degrees of its free expression. But everything, any form created, is created so that life may enter and live in it. And now when you look at the whole universe from this perspective, we would come to the conclusion, even the atom, which is nothing but a form emerging out of the formless, unstable substratum, even the atom as a stable form is intended to be a vehicle for life. Maybe a crude first step of life expression. And all the subsequent, more refined, more complex structures of cells, organs and bodies are similarly simply more complex, freely expressing the powers of life. But the atom already holds secretly that living presence. The sun, the stars, the planets, any form that you see is intended to be the body for life. To do what? That life may move in them, that it may act, that it may riot and enjoy. So if you look at the nature of life energy, first is this character of movement. But movement for what? Some action, something, some pushing, something which it wants to do. Act. But the act need not be always rational, need not always be for a intelligent purpose, trying to make efficient, trying to make the shortest means. The nature of the action is a play, a riot, therefore. Riot is a play which is chaotic. And so the first movement of life is to play out every possibility. Anything that can be done, it will try to do. And it will do, even if it fails, it will repeat and do again and again and again, and every possibility. And in this play of all possibilities, some possibilities may survive longer. Some possibilities may build up habits faster. And those are the form and tendencies of form which we see in evolution surviving. But there are innumerable other possibilities attempted which do not survive so easily, or upon which life force may not put as much intensity and repetitive energy. So what life builds through its riotous, chaotic play, what it chooses to build through is what remains in what we see as evolution. So just stop for a moment and observe a single atom. You will see it chaotically moving. It's the very nature of life force. In physics, they will speak of this because of the scientist who first observed it. They call it Bernoulli's movement. So you will find this movement going on through the microscope. All particles are in a continuous state of agitation. You increase the heat and the agitation is more rapid and larger. But where is this agitation coming from? Well, that seems to be the nature of things underlying chaotic energy. But the energy pushing is this operation of Vayu. That same energy in the initial agitation builds certain repetitive patterns which become then the sustaining life force, secretly guiding Agni's forms, but then filling the forms and revealing himself. So it's as if it's made for him, all the forms in the universe, for his play. And what is the purpose of that riotous play? To enjoy. So Sri Aurobindo puts it in this sequence, that life may move in them, that it may act, that it may riot and enjoy. Now, in the initial movement of the riot, you do not see obviously what is the nature of the enjoyment. It is chaotic. Things bang against each other, things enter in conflict, forms break, forms reform. But if you try to feel the nature of life energy, observe, for example, in children, they want to run around, they want to scream, they want to exercise all the possibilities in them and push all of them to their limit in every possible direction. After a while, when that play has been sufficiently explored, then certain things come forward where the enjoyment is more interesting. And those are the very ones where the mind begins now to act. And Indra is gradually preparing to enter, to lead through the life force. When, as human beings, even as adults, when you are faced with something new, what do? You try to define what are all the things, what are all the limits that you can push it to. A person's personality, character is not known until you have explored all the possible engagements that he can have in different kinds of situations. That's when you say, now I know exactly how this person behaves, I know who he is. Within ourselves, the instinct is always to push boundaries, to push limits, to go a little more and try more, until we collide with some basic limitation. Then we back off. So this is the play of life, that he may riot and enjoy. Recall from the Isha Upanishad, the very first line, all this is for the habitation of the Lord. And Sri Aurobindo in his commentary explains what is the purpose of habitation. And he says, it is to possess and enjoy. For the divine to possess all the forms and enjoy himself in form, through form, and even outside form. So Vayu carries, and in us the life principle is what brings the enjoyment of life. When our life force is weak, we seem to become unable to enjoy. When life force is intense, we have a riotous enjoyment. But of course, these are the surface workings. The true enjoyment, which is not swinging from extremes, happiness and sadness and dualities, is of the psychic being within. Its character of enjoyment is of a fundamentally different kind. It can enjoy everything. Unlike the surface operation of life force, which finds that the things where it collides and breaks are not so enjoyable. It experiences struggles, failures, sadnesses, unhappinesses, and contrasts with things where it can grow, where it experiences happiness and enjoyment. The true enjoyment is of the inner psychic principle, which looks at it all equally and finds growth in every opportunity. So, this now is the God who rises to the call. Interestingly, the way Sri Aurobindo formulates it, he says, another God rises to the call. It's as if one faculty went, failed, and as it settled, returning, another comes forward. If this demon be no birth of matter, but some stupendous life force, active whether in the depths or on the heights of being, who shall know it? Who shall seize it in his universal expansion? If not Vayu Matarishvan? And here in the commentary he points that the operation of the life force is across all the planes. Whether it is something which is in the depths or on the heights of your being, on all levels it is the life force which acts. We have taken the example of the life force working inside matter, even in the atom, and equally it works in our mind. It is the enthusiasm which fills the mind, which drives the mind, makes it turn in curiosity. That too is an operation of Vayu. So across all these ranges, it is Vayu who knows and enjoys. Given any form, he can seize, he can enter, possess and enjoy. So who shall seize it in his universal expansion, if not Vayu Matarishvan? There is the same confident advance upon the object, the same formidable challenge. Who art thou? What is the force in thee? This is what the demon asks. And let's go back to the verse itself. Then they said to Vayu, O Vayu, this discern, what is this mighty demon? He said, so be it. He rushed upon that. It said to him, who art thou? I am Vayu, he said, and I am he that expands in the mother of things. Mother capital. I am he that expands in the mother of things. So the demon responds, since such thou art, what is the force in thee? What is it that characterizes Vayu's action? And he replies, even all this I can take for myself, all this that is upon the earth. That set before him a blade of grass, this take. He went towards it with all his speed, and he could not take it. Even there he ceased, even thence he returned. I could not discern of that, what is this mighty demon? And so this is what we have read from the text, and then the gods call upon Indra. So let's see Sri Aurobindo's commentary. So who art thou? What is the force in thee? And the meaning of his response, Sri Aurobindo elaborates, this is Vayu Matarishvan. And the power in him is this, that he, the life, can take all things in his stride and growth and seize on them for his mastery and enjoyment. Now conceive of the whole universe and everything that exists in the universe. Vayu Matarishvan can take in his stride, in his growth also, not just in who he is, but in his possibility of expanding further. Seize on them for his mastery and enjoyment. In other words, any form that you create, any object you can conceive of, life force can enter into it and enjoy and play out its possibilities. Look at the whole universe now through these eyes. Even the clouds. Your rational, scientifically trained mind will say, it's just a blob of gas, of water molecules. This too, Vayu Matarishvan can enter into, seize upon, and play out the possibilities of his life energy. The winds that blow are obviously also his vehicles. The empty space, which we conceive of as empty, is not empty. It is full of what they call today the solar wind, which also is form and substance. This too he can seize upon. The sun itself, the planets themselves, the entire galaxies, everything, everywhere in the universe. If you can see in the sky where the solar wind hits the earth, there is this bright illumination that is created that they call the aurora borealis, or just aurora generally. And it is an illumination in the sky like sheets of light which play and dance. Watch the videos, if you can, on YouTube, and you'll be amazed. After a while, you will be convinced that they're alive. The way they play, the way the lights dance, the way the curtains and sheets of light move, almost as if enjoying themselves, playing, almost as if they are conscious. In the same way as if you sit before a flame, burn a log of wood or just a normal candle flame or a gas flame, sit before it and stare at it for a while. And after a while, when you see the way the fire burns, you'll begin to feel within yourself, it's conscious, it's enjoying itself. And the same thing you experience with this play of light. Observe the wind and the way the wind blows through the leaves in the trees, blows through the fields and makes the plants dance, move in unison. And if you watch long enough, you'll begin to feel the wind is playing with all these, makes them play around, dance around, move around. And when it has played a little bit in this way, it changes the play, plays now in a different way and another way. And you're looking at small pieces of the working of the wind. If you step back still larger and observe a larger expanse across many fields, you will see a larger play of which many of these smaller plays are going on. If you step back into space, you will see gigantic movements of wind creating many variations of local weather in different parts of the earth. And this gigantic inclusive play, of which there are many sub-plays, of which there are sub-plays, and so on. Sometimes when you watch just a barren desert soil, you will feel the wind, and suddenly it's as if the wind spins and forms what they call dust devils. A whirl, like a little tornado, which makes the dust rise, and then it moves around playing. And you literally have the sense that it is a conscious entity that is playing. The reality is that it is conscious. And so in the more occult, shamanic or other traditions, they recognize the spirit of that little whirlwind. Not only that they can invoke it, they can ask it to grow. If they enter into a relation with it, they can even ask it for help, and so on. There's a very interesting incident narrated in a fascinating book titled Rolling Thunder, which is the name of a Native American medicine man who has obviously developed some of these abilities and relationships with the powers in nature. He just demonstrates one of the things where he tickles a dung beetle, and as he tickles it, it creates lightning in the air. But there's an incident narrated there where he is asked to help some young Native Americans who have been arrested and put in jail falsely. And he says, since they have been attacked falsely, I can use my power to free them. And the narration is that he does he lights a fire. With an invocation, a whirlwind forms over the fire. And then he walks towards the jail, and the whirlwind follows him, and he commands it to enter the jail, break the door, and open the gates. The people who are jailed are obviously freed thence. But it is a terrifying sight to see a human being walking, followed by a whirlwind. But if you recognize that these are conscious beings, they are in habitations of the smaller forms and explorations of the delight, the play, the enjoyment, the riot. And therefore, when you meet them as small plays of riot, you see them as small riotous beings. Mother similarly describes how when she was traveling in the ship, there was a terrible storm and there was a danger of the ship sinking. She was with Theon, and Theon told her to go down into the cabin, go into trance and stop the storm. So she describes how she lay down, came out of her body, And when she rose above, she saw the entire space was full of these little beings playing around, dancing, creating chaos in fun. Now you cannot tell them stop. They're just having fun. They don't listen to you. So she said she brought down a calm and peace and compelled them to become quiet. And then she came back into her body. She returned to the surface of the ship. The storm had passed. Everything was clear. There was no wind. Everything was still. All these so-called natural phenomena, we can look at their surface form and describe them through Agni's processes of physics, climate, etc. Or we can look behind at the power that enters and plays through the forms. It is a conscious power. It can will and choose and play. And so we can look at the deeper truth behind of Vayu and all the forms of life that he inhabits, view each of those forms as separate or view them all as specialized forms of the one universal life. And we can enter in relation with them and even change the relationships and ask their aid in bringing greater harmony in earth life, in the climate, and in all the processes of life. So this is the insight we gain when we look at this truth of Vayu Matarishwan. All this is the power of Vayu Matarishwan. The life can take all this in his stride and growth and seize on them for his mastery and enjoyment. So such a being coming now forward, what can he do? And the blade of grass before him? But even the veriest, frailest trifle, he cannot seize and master, so long as it is protected against him by the shield of the omnipotent. So here is a power so much greater, all powerful, as if transcending a level greater than Vayu. Vayu cannot mess around with anything that it protects with its shield. Vayu too returns, not having discovered. One thing only is settled, that this is no form or force of cosmic life which operates within the limits of the all-grasping vital impulse. It is too great for Vayu. And so we pause here and we'll continue the text next Sunday and briefly review the deeper sense of Vayu also from the text of Sri Aurobindo's commentary in his Secret of the Veda, and then what happens when Indra moves forward. And we can take this time to dwell upon the deeper sense of Vayu and develop our own inner intuitive perception of the play and the working of the life force, both as a universal life and in all his workings, in all the infinite variations of smaller forms and substances across the universe.